Master, John, what do you want? And Jesus, with a smile that brightens his face, embraces his dearest apostle with one arm, holding him close to himself while walking. We were talking among ourselves, and we were uncertain about one thing, this: whether you know all the future, or is part of it hidden from you. Some of us said one thing, some another. And what did you say? I said that the best thing was to ask you. And so you came. You did the right thing. That gives you and me the opportunity to enjoy a moment of love. Only so rarely now can we have some peace. It's true. How beautiful the early days were. Yes, for the man, which we are, they were more beautiful. But for the spirit which is in us, these days are better, because the word of God is better known, and because we suffer more. The more one suffers, the more one redeems, John. So although we remember the happy days, we must be more fond of these ones that grieve us, and through grief they give us souls. But I will answer your question. Now, before we get on to this question of Jesus' omniscience, or otherwise, I want to pause so that we don't miss out that he says here, the more one suffers, the more one redeems. First point to note is, we can redeem? Isn't there just one Redeemer? If you've watched my videos, you'll know that here and there, Jesus refers to Christians, true Christians, as potentially co-redeemers. Redeemers with a small r. And I've deduced from that, obviously, that if the greatest Christian is the Virgin Mary, and it's hard to argue against that, then it's quite proper to speak of her as the greatest co-redeemer, or we could say, in feminine form, the co-redemptrix. Here again, he's referring to people as being redeemers. So he is the Redeemer. Without his redemption, there can be no sharing in the task of redemption. And I drew attention to St. Paul's letter to the Colossians, chapter 1, verse 24, where it's clearly implied in the text there that St. Paul is explaining that he is a co-redeemer too. Thus, we have an affirmation that although there's only one mediator, although there's only one Redeemer, just to take the mediation point from the letter to the Hebrews, still we mediate. We mediate on behalf of our fellow Christians, on behalf of pagans. So we are co-mediators and co-redeemers too. Actually, elsewhere in the work, I can't remember exactly where, Jesus does speak of Mary as the co-redemptrix. Because of this, I have little doubt that at some stage a dogma will be declared that she is the co-redemptrix. But we must just watch and wait to see if that's true. But that was the first thing, to make it clear that we can be co-redeemers and that it's proper to speak of Mary as co-redemptrix. But the mechanism to become a redeemer is what? Jesus says, the more one suffers, the more one redeems. This theme of suffering, it seems to be very much neglected in the post-Vatican II Church. It will come back. It's probably, my assessment, it's probably the result of our Western way of life. We live in the age of abundance, an abundance humanity has never known before. And not just that, this abundance has gone on now ever since the immediate post-war period. It was there in the United States from the early 50s. It came to us too in that time when credit became more widely available. You could buy all kinds of consumer appliances on what we used to call hire purchase, the HP. How us, like my family, poor people, we did buy everything on hire purchase. Nothing could be bought outright. But it meant working class people had access to what would otherwise be luxury goods. And this is a phenomenon across the Western world. Now, I know it's a debt-driven economy that we have now in the West, and it's a real problem. But that debt has made us all like Roman emperors in the way we can live. Now, I know there is a huge numbers of people on the margins in the Western world, and I'm not talking about what one might call the global South, where poverty is the norm. But I'm just focusing on why in the Western world there's not an emphasis on suffering. And in fact, there's an emphasis on avoiding suffering or even bringing it to an end, as we have in Britain. Now, finally, after many, many attempts, the bashing of the door constantly, until finally it was opened to allow in assisted dying. But on the contrary, we have to push against that with the most apparently absurd idea. Talk about the foolishness of the cross, as St. Paul does, how we must be fools for Christ's sake. It seems even more absurd than being against abortion, whereas the abortionists deep down they know we have reason on our side. But to say we'd have reason on our side for suggesting that suffering is a good, impossible to understand outside of Christianity. In the Muslim world, for example, impossible to understand. You might suffer in the process of trying to conquer, so you might suffer wounds in battle, but suffering in itself, foreign to Islam. I don't know whether Judaism has, modern Judaism, the version of Judaism, which is not Judaism, not the religion of Christ's time, but I don't know if in that religion there is some salvific element to suffering. But with Catholicism, the idea of suffering, victim souls, has been central until our age of abundance. But as I say, it will be back. That will be when the downturn begins, the serious downturn, a downturn without an upswing, a downturn that will make the Great Depression look mild. That may come through war, through wars in which we foolishly engage, as we have done so often, the two world wars being prime examples. Or it will be the wars others engage in with the terrifying weapons available and which therefore affect us in this part of the world.